Good afternoon. I'd like to call to order the Public Works Finance and Safety Committee meeting of Monday, December 2nd, 2019. First item on the agenda is approval of the consent agenda.
Motion to approve.
Have a motion by Y and a second by Holeen. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by
Aye.
saying nay. Motion carries. Item 2 is public input. This is the time set aside for anybody to come forward and speak about anything. If you'd like, please approach the microphone. See no one, we'll move on. Item 3. Oh, I'm sorry. Have a seat.
I was looking for the mic.
Oh, okay. State your name for the record, please.
My name is Mark Guthmuller,
Okay.
and I live in 1108 Oak Drive, and it regards the stormwater tax. On
Okay.
Oak Drive, we have no storm sewers, and it affects, well, at least 25 homes, if not more, because we get water drained off 12th Street as well as it comes around the corner and runs down Oak Drive down to 10th, and then somewhere disappears down there. I think I know where it disappears to. I think there's a slough down the road a little ways where it runs off 10th into the slough that runs through there. And I guess I wasn't sure that, being that we don't benefit from a storm sewer, and I suspect there may be others in the city of Watertown that don't either, why we would necessarily need to pay the tax. All summer long, I had water sitting at the end of my driveway because the road doesn't, slope properly to take it all the way. So I basically had a miniature lake at the end of my driveway all summer long, and it wasn't just because of the rain. It was also because of then people, as directed to, dumping their sump pump water, onto the street, and that running down there throughout the summer. So, and to try to keep the garage neat and clean was almost an impossible task because you're always driving through the water that ends up sitting at the end of the driveway because the flow is not there. And because the storm sewer isn't there where water can go, disappear, and run underground. So I guess I just was here to, question the advisability of taxing everybody with the storm sewer tax when not everybody directly benefits from it. I suppose the argument, and I believe I heard it or listened to part of the comments at KXLG from the last meeting, and I think the comment was that, well, indirectly you benefit, but that may or may not be so. But it would just be nice to get the water drained off the road. I live on Oak Drive, like I said, so I'm not having to drive through it all summer long. And then there's moss and other buildup, there as well. So,
All right, thank you very much.
thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak in the public comment period? See none, we'll move on. Item number 3 is approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Have a motion by Vilhauer, second by Helene. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify
Aye.
by saying nay. Motion carries. Item number 4 is review and discussion on the draft stormwater utility ordinance. And I will let Heath make some introductions here.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of council, thank you for inviting us back this meeting to have some follow-up discussion. As you recall, for the sake of the public that's listening, where we left this at the last meeting was we gave a kind of a general introductory presentation of what the stormwater utility for the city of Watertown would look like. We talked about some revenue generation from that stormwater utility, what those funds could be used for potentially. We talked about some real costs that were budgeted for in 2019 funds that this fund could have been used for to pay for. And at the end of that discussion, we talked about bringing forth the draft ordinance itself that the council could potentially take up for consideration at a future meeting. So that being said, our consultant joins me again tonight, Jeremy Walgrave with SEH, is a licensed engineer with them, and is going to walk through the terms of the ordinance with me here tonight. And we'd be glad to entertain any questions along the way. Feel free to interject, and we'll walk through this with you this evening. Thanks again.
Thank you. So again, thank you for having me and here to talk about the stormwater ordinance. What I put together is a PowerPoint presentation that kind of breaks out the different aspects of the ordinance so that we can kind of talk through that and see if there's any specific questions about any particular item in the ordinance. A couple other things just to note. So there is a unit rate associated with the stormwater utility. That rate is not part of the ordinance. And I believe what we discussed at the last meeting was that that would be set by council resolution. So again, we'll do a kind of a step-by-step walkthrough of the ordinance, and then I have just a couple examples to try to simplify some of the math, I guess, that goes into it. I'll just read these word for word. So basically, Subdivision 1, Stormwater Utility and Authority. So there is hereby established a public utility to be known as the Stormwater Utility for the City of Watertown. The Stormwater Utility shall be operated as a public utility pursuant to the City Code and applicable statutes. The revenue shall be subject to provisions of this section, South Dakota Codified Law, Chapters 9-40 and 46A-10B. Any questions about the authority?
I'll just add to that. Obviously, we've been working with the city attorney, Matt Roby, on some of this preliminary work. And 9-40 and 46A-10B are the two primary sources of state statute that guide municipality regulations and establishment of a stormwater utility. So we've leaned into those heavily and researched what guidelines they put into place that we would have to abide by. So.
Subdivision 2, the purpose of the ordinance is to provide a funding mechanism for the following services: administration, planning, analysis, installation, operations, maintenance, and replacement of public drainage systems. The administration, planning, implementation, construction, and maintenance of stormwater best management practices, also known as BMPs, to reduce the introduction of sediment and other pollutants into the local water resources. Other education, engineering, inspection, monitoring, testing, and enforcement activities as necessary to maintain compliance with local, state, and federal stormwater requirements. And then also activities necessary to maintain compliance with the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, NPDES, Municipal Separate Storm Sewer Systems, MS4 permit. So I'll say NPDES, MS4 permit as we go here. But again, these are requirements established by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, including preparation, implementation, and management of stormwater pollution prevention plans to address the following control measures. 1, public education and outreach on stormwater impacts. 2, public involvement and participation. 3, illicit discharge detection and elimination. 4, construction site stormwater runoff control. 5, post-construction runoff control and new development and redevelopment. 6, pollution prevention for municipal operations. And the stormwater utility shall be part of the Public Works Department and shall be administered by the Public Works Director. This ordinance shall apply to the entire city of Watertown. Any questions on?
I think one of the general takeaway from this screen would be really to help paint a picture that would help address some of the citizens' concerns that we actually heard here this evening, that this fee would not specifically be only to maintain current existing infrastructure. It would absolutely be appropriate to use these monies towards new infrastructure, the installation of new infrastructure. We've actually got a project program for 2020 that looks at the Highland subdivision area where there's also no storm sewer currently, but it's in need of it. And funds like this would be used to retrofit new storm sewer systems into those neighborhoods that currently do not have any. And those residents would then obviously realize a more direct benefit from this utility fee at that point, once we were able to program those new installations into their neighborhoods and so on and so forth. But this part of the ordinance definitely touches on that, the breadth of what this fund could be used for, while also restricting what this fund could be used for. You can see there's no mention of snow plows in here, or things of that nature. This would strictly be used for stormwater maintenance activities for both existing and future infrastructure.
Councilman Roby?
Our public speaking section, we had a gentleman bring up an issue that I'm pretty familiar with, and that's the discharge of the sumps into the streets. And those are, I think, designed now to run into the storm sewer. Is there anything in here that would involve addressing those directly and how we handle sump pump discharge?
So again, you're talking about sump pump discharge that goes directly to the street? Is that?
Or other solutions than having it go directly to the street?
I don't believe there's anything directly in the ordinance, but my answer to that, Councilman Roby, would be indirectly, if we were to want to implement sump collection systems that the city were to own and maintain and operate, that could be another project or effort that these funds could be used towards, being it a stormwater related impact that sump pump discharges end up being. I think that'd be an appropriate use of these funds. The ordinance does not specifically contemplate sump pump discharges, however.
Go ahead.
Just to follow up, a little more specific, an example. We're going to redo a street. Well, while we're redoing that street and we're digging up the gutters anyway, why wouldn't we put some type of sump collection system in there if it's economically feasible? And if it is economically feasible, is this how we'd afford to do that?
Yeah, and those are the exact retrofit sump collection systems that I was referring to, would be exactly in that scenario. Whether it be at the back of curb when we're replacing and reconstructing curbs, or in some neighborhoods, perhaps if easements were there or accessible, we put in backyard systems as well. There's some options that other communities have used that we have as examples that we could, to kind of help steer those decisions in the future.
Jeremy, because sump pump discharge is groundwater, it's not stormwater, do other communities have direct text in their stormwater utility about that?
I haven't seen any direct text relating to that, but what I would say is as soon as it discharges, it's now a
Becomes surface water,
Right.
but not really stormwater. We're calling it stormwater utility, not
Right.
surface water utility.
That's true. I think another way to look at it would be as if it's causing ice issues or ponding or flooding issues. That would be something that I would see as directly applicable here.
Yeah. And generally, it does end up in the stormwater
Right.
system eventually, sooner or later. Yeah. Someone else have a comment? Councilman Hoyer?
I was just going to ask kind of along the lines of, so yeah, in our community we use our sump pumps a lot, most folks do anyway. Is it better for it, and I'm not trying to derail it or anything, but in the meantime, when you're pumping, if you were to put an elbow on it so it didn't shoot into the street and it shot directly in the curb, is that going to do less wear and tear on the system than just shooting straight out into the road?
I honestly, I couldn't tell you for sure. It's probably a case-by-case situation.
Fair enough.
All right, subdivision 3, rates and charges. In determining the charges, the city council may establish a stormwater utility policy to specify application fees, exceptions, exemptions, unit areas, residential equivalency factors, and unit rates to charge utility users based upon the volume or direct runoff estimated to be generated by various land uses within the city. So the estimated charges, if for any reason precise information related to the use, development, or area of a premise is not available, then stormwater utility charges for such premise shall be estimated and billed based upon information then available to the city. The billing method, stormwater utility fees will be computed and collected by the city together with other city utility fees. And then delinquent accounts, delinquent and unpaid stormwater utility fees may be certified to the county auditor for collection with real estate taxes during the following year and any year thereafter. And we'll have to get the correct codified law that specifies that.
And I would like to point out too, on those two components specifically, the billing method and delinquent accounts, this is something that's still in the works. As far as whether it will be a city utility fee assessed on the monthly utility bill, or whether we decide to exercise the other option to levy an annual tax on the property tax bill, is still up for discussion. That the council definitely will be part of as we continue that discussion. I met as recent as today with our partners over at Municipal Utilities and talked about what this would look like to incorporate the utility fee on the utility bill. And there's definitely some continued discussion to have there. And in respect out of those discussions, I'd hate to lean heavily one way or the other here this evening as far as a recommendation to the council, but would like to continue those discussions with Municipal Utilities and talk about that feasibility.
I guess I'll jump in there too, Heath. As you know, I was part of that meeting today. We met for a better part of an hour and a half along with our finance officer. I expressed the opinion at the last meeting, my personal opinion, that I would have liked to have seen it as part of our utility fee, and that is still my thought. But there were some very good points raised by the utility staff that I think it definitely does warrant further discussion by a group of city utility personnel, along with maybe a contingent or a few people from this body, along with a couple utility board members, because I think there are a lot of things to vet and flesh out that were brought up today in our meeting over at the utilities with their staff.
Thank you.
And to those points, as far as delinquent accounts go, that language too, depending on how this falls, could be modified as well. If we do incorporate it into the city utility fees on the monthly billing cycle, there's a chance that we would not, and it would make more sense not to take it to a real estate tax assessment for unpaid or uncollected fees, but rather follow the protocol that the other utilities fees that we collect go through. And so there may be some variations to these two items that we need to fine-tune and continue to discuss and figure out what's best for the community and a final proposal for the council to move forward with.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Continuing with rates and charges. Appeal. If a property owner believes that the fee charged to a particular property is incorrect, she or he may request review and recomputation of said fee by the city engineer. The fee for the residential properties is standardized and therefore is not eligible for appeal. If the fee is changed through the appeal process, the change will not be applied retroactively. The appeal shall only apply to the total parcel area and the actual land use type assigned to the parcel and used in the calculation of the fee. The burden of proof is the responsibility of the property owner, and the proof required shall be at the discretion of the city engineer. Any questions about the appeal process?
This section is kind of an important placeholder for the general public to have the right to appeal a fee, particularly in this case for the commercial and industrial properties, where a more exact calculation is going to be used on their fee. As this ordinance states, and as is common for municipalities that assess a flat residential rate, they normally don't entertain an appeal process for those flat residential rates, and that's why our ordinance mimics that same format, because of us proposing a flat residential rate as well.
All right. All right, just a few definitions. These will be important as we move forward, as we start using a couple acronyms as we get a little deeper into the ordinance. Subdivision 4 definitions, unless the context specifically indicates otherwise, the following terms as used in this ordinance shall have the meanings herein after designated. Surface area, referred to herein as SA, shall be the area of the parcel in acres, subject to any standardization, adjustments, or exceptions outlined in this ordinance. Land use. Land use for a given parcel shall be one of 8 land use classifications as shown in the land use graph below as determined by the city zoning officer. The residential equivalency factor, referred to herein as REF, is the ratio of the accumulated direct runoff generated by a particular land use to the accumulated direct runoff generated by the residential land use. The unit rate, referred to herein as UR, is the rate in dollars per acre to be charged per 1 REF. Single-family residential is the land use classification of parcels with 3 or less living units. And high-density residential is the land use classification of parcels with 4 or more living units.
Councilman Roby?
This is kind of a nit, but why call it single family when it's not single family? Why don't you just call it low density?
Good question. It can certainly be spelled out that way. The initial intent, though, of the way this is set up right now is just to simplify as much as possible, but it certainly could be added. All right, subdivision 5, establishing a rate. So determining the REF, or the residential equivalency factor. The accumulated direct runoff Q used to determine the REF shall be calculated based on an evaluation of the land use and application of a standardized soil type and rainfall event. The calculated direct runoff Q shall be based on the runoff equation in the Soil Conservation Services SCS National Engineering Handbook Section 4 Hydrology. The equation is as follows, where you can see a couple different numbers up there. I think P is an important one, is the 2.5 inches is kind of what this is based on. And then the curve number, the CN number, is the runoff index. And again, it's based on the land use and the Natural Resources Conservation Services manual. So it's considered a NRCS type B soil. The runoff indices, CN and REFs for the various land uses within the city shall be set forth in the table below. And so again, just to kind of simplify how we think about this, the CN, or the curve number, is really a factor that has to do with the land use type and the amount of impervious and the potential for how much runoff it can generate. So again, kind of the extreme ends to think about would be if you had a field full of prairie grass, you'd expect a really low runoff potential there. And so you would expect a very low curve number or runoff index, versus if you had a 50-acre paved parking lot, you'd expect it to have an extremely high runoff volume and rate, and you would see a much higher runoff index. And again, looking at the runoff index and then translating over to the REF, that's sort of the way that we translate these curve numbers into these factors for the different land use types.
So, in a nutshell, what Jeremy's getting at here is obviously the nuts and bolts of the calculations that relate to the hydrology and the runoff for any given site throughout the community. There's a lot of science that goes into hydrology, and when you're calculating runoff, there's a lot of estimation that goes into that. There's a lot of standardization that goes into it. And that's essentially the back end is what Jeremy's talking about here, the back end of what becomes a lot more simplified equation for us to apply, as we'll go into on the next slide here. But we felt it was important to show everybody that there's a lot of technical component that goes into this that we drill down into, and then we end up creating a lot more simplified equation that equates to the final fee that each property will be assessed.
Thank you. Yep, and then finally, the REF for land uses not listed above shall be determined by the city based on probable hydrologic response. Any questions? So establishing unit rates, City Council shall from time to time by resolution establish the unit rate. The unit rate so established shall be on file with the city administrator or clerk. It shall be used to compute the charges for a given parcel of land based on the following formula. And I just want to, there's a couple steps that are a little bit out of line here, so feel free to jump in with questions, but we'll kind of over the next couple slides dissect this a little bit in the ordinance. But again, here's an example of a 1 acre commercial property. And so if the council were to set a unit rate of $7.89 per acre, the monthly stormwater charge below would be figured out by the unit rate times the REF, which is the residential equivalency factor, and then the surface area. And so again, at the very bottom, you see $7.89 per acre times the 4.23 factor, which is a commercial property about kind of in the middle of that table there. 1 acre property comes out to about $33.37 per month. The standardized charges, again, the residential single-family properties. The following rules shall apply for all purpose of simplifying and equalizing the charges. A standard surface area of 0.38 acres shall be used for single-family residential parcels. Number 2, a standard surface area of 0.38 acres for each unit shall be used in computing stormwater charges for the following dwellings: duplexes, twin homes, townhouses, and detached townhouses. So for example, a parcel that contains 2 townhouse units shall have a surface area computed as follows: 2 units times the 0.38 acres per unit, or 0.74 acres. Parcels subject to these standardized charges shall not be eligible for appeals to the charges or areas as set forth elsewhere herein. So again, here's an example of kind of how the unit rate and the single family rate shakes out or kind of ties together. So if the council were to set a unit rate of $7.89 per month, or per acre per month, so again, that's 1 acre. The single family residential is going to be based on a 0.38 acre, because that's about an average parcel size for Watertown. So what the calculation shows here is that you take that unit rate times the actual acreage, and that's the very bottom line. You'll see there $7.89 times 0.38 acres is going to come out to a $3 per month charge for a single family residential.
Councilman Roby?
I understand why you do not have the ability to appeal this. That sounds rather harsh. Would you just kind of maybe touch on that again so it's clearly understood why it's written that way?
Yep, sure. 2 things. One, again, is just to kind of set a standard across all residential properties. Tends to relieve some of the administrative burden on the back end. What other communities have done is is actually based on the actual square footage of the property. And what that tends to lead to is people, lots of people appealing what area you're charging them on. Then their amount of impervious starts to come into play, so how much driveway, sidewalk, rooftop they have. And it gets extremely challenging as things move forward and people start improving their property, or they take out a piece of sidewalk and then would typically approach the city to come and revise their rate. And so on the back end, the administrative end, it tends to start adding up in terms of staff time.
And to that point that Jeremy makes, one of the things on the onset of this ordinance is that we wanted to keep it simple for the community, wanted to keep it simple for staff to administer. One of the things that can happen, like what Jeremy describes, is unintended consequences of heavy administrative burden and costs to administer this ordinance, if not done simply. That's where we really leaned into the universal flat rate for residential. If we were to be charged with the duty of going out and measuring somebody that added a third stall to their garage, for example, and widened their driveway, and staff time having to go out and measure that and quantify that, and staff time to modify those calculations for their fee, you can imagine how that could snowball over a year's time into a pretty heavy administrative demand and cost to the community to carry that administrative duty out. So we were trying to avoid it from that perspective as well.
Councilman Roby?
Just said another way, and I wanted this to be clear, if we didn't standardize it, we'd all spend more money in the long run than if we standardized it.
Precisely.
Councilman Hoyer?
Just for clarification too, for folks out there, I know that when we're talking about the REF, we're talking about the P at 1.2 inches based on a 24-hour 2-inch rainfall event. Just for understanding, even if it doesn't rain in a month, say we're in a drought, are you still going to be assessed that month, or does
Yes.
it actually? Okay.
Yes, good question. Stormwater utility fees may be adjusted under any of the following conditions: revisions of the unit rate. The estimated expenditures for the management of stormwater shall be reviewed by the city council. The unit rate shall be adjusted accordingly to meet the estimated expenditures and will follow established procedures for adjustment of any utility rates. Minimum or maximum fees. The city council may establish a minimum or maximum monthly fee per parcel. The minimum fee shall be set equal to the single-family residential standardized fee. Change in development condition of a parcel. So as land is developed and or redeveloped, the fees will be recomputed based on the revised land use. An adjustment to area. The total parcel area is shown in the city assessor's records will be used to calculate the surface area for a given parcel, except that apparent errors in the recorded values may be subject to recalculation by the city. It is the responsibility of the owner or manager of any parcel to provide the city with necessary surveys and other information, as the city may reasonably request to determine if a parcel or portion of a parcel qualifies for an exception or area adjustment. Requests for exceptions and or area adjustments will be reviewed after receipt of all requested information. Exceptions and or adjustments must be approved by the city and shall become effective the beginning of the next billing cycle following approval.
Councilman Helene?
Thank you. Could you go back one slide?
Yep.
Number 3 there, just a question for you. As land is developed and or redeveloped, I assume you're talking about like commercial or the non-residential land issues, because residential remains at the flat fee, right?
That's right. You could also have a situation where you've got a vacant parcel that may be a single-family home. So in that case, when the single-family home is built, then they would be assessed that fee. But yeah, otherwise redevelopment, new development. Yep.
Councilman Lallam?
I believe
what we asked last time was if it was nothing built on the property, then they wouldn't be assessed the fee, correct?
That's right. Yep.
That's what he's talking about.
Yes.
So essentially, when you start building, you're charged the fee.
Right. That's correct. Yep. All right. These are some exceptions. So these would be totally exempt from stormwater utility fees. Public street right-of-way, wetlands and public waters as defined by state law, undeveloped parcels, publicly owned parklands, natural areas and recreational fields, railroad right-of-way, cemeteries, cropland without any other land uses on the property, federally owned property, county-owned property, city-owned property, airport, and quarries. And then finally, falsification of information, willful failure to provide information that the city may reasonably request related to the use, development, and area of a premise, or falsification of such information shall constitute a violation of the city's stormwater utility ordinance.
All right, thank you. Do we have questions? Anyone else? It's a good overview. Councilman Holeen, did you have one?
Well, Mayor, I'm not sure if it would be appropriate, but since we had someone talk, not necessarily as an opponent, but as just a concerned homeowner, I was wondering if any of his thoughts were addressed. I thought Heath did a great job at the beginning of mentioning that, but I wasn't sure, and I wasn't sure if it was appropriate, I guess begging your leniency, if he had any
Sure.
thoughts.
Are you willing to address the issue of people feeling like since there's no underground pipe in front of their property or inlet?
Sure. One of the things that the city always will have to deal with is the permitting part of it. So you have a permit with the MS4 permit. So there are a whole lot of activities that the city already has to do, such as street sweeping, illicit discharge related items, just reporting. Those are all things that, whether you have a storm sewer or not, the city still has to do it. And then I think the other thing that Heath mentioned is, future improvements. And that could mean when the street is reconstructed, there's new storm sewer. It could mean fixing other flooding issues. It also relates to water quality issues. So.
Right, thank you. Also, I'll point out that curb and gutter, our stormwater management infrastructure, and I think Oak has curb and gutter all along both sides, and so can't forget that. And also, some of the activities like street sweeping is very clearly a water quality control activity, which would fall under the regulation here, that something we pay for right now, and we don't have another funding source other than just our general tax dollars to pay for that. Councilman Vilhauer?
Mayor, I would invite, I know we have our municipal utilities director in the audience, and they potentially could be a big factor, a big part of this. I would invite Mr. Lehner to come forward and speak if he feels so inclined.
Put me on the hot spot. Thanks, Glenn. Steve Lehner from Watertown Municipal Utilities. Yeah, Heath and Glenn and Kristen just came to our office today. I know Heath had some preliminary discussions with Adam and Bert in my absence. So this is really the first take I've had at this. I did come to the city council meeting when we first started talking about a stormwater utility fee, and it was within that class. So we have an owner that pays all the utilities and just assesses rent. We have a renter that gets charged all of their utilities. So where should this go on the utility billing sector? It will cause us extra administration time, as Heath had talked about, having a flat rate to lower the administration cost for the city. We have the same issue in the billing side. So we have a lot of things to talk through. We identified a half a dozen issues today. After Heath and Glenn left, we identified another few issues that we need to compile and talk through, as we'll have some major pushback, I'm afraid, through the whole process. So, you know, at this point, just preliminary, the utilities would rather this not be charged on the utility bill, but we're having more discussion along those lines, and we'll see where it goes. So. Questions?
Thank you. Any questions for Steve? Councilman Villar?
I guess I'll just repeat what I said a few minutes ago. My recommendation at that meeting today was, yes, I agree completely with what Steve just said, an awful lot of issues to hash out, especially if the utilities would be part of this, that I would like to see us, we're not in a position tonight, I don't know what kind of timetable we're necessarily under to get this implemented. I know we'd like to get it done as soon as possible. By the same token, I don't want to rush into something that we end up regretting after it's implemented. So that's why I would, again, recommend continuing to work on this with a contingent of utility staff, city staff, along with some representation from we as a council, along with a contingent from your board, Steve, to see if we can come up with something that would be agreeable to the utilities. If not, where do we go from there? So that's my recommendation, that as we discuss this tonight, as far as where we go with this.
All right, thank you. Councilman Helene?
Thank you. Assuming Steve is going to step away from the mic, that would mean an open mic. I was wondering if Mark, who spoke during the public input section, after hearing your concerns addressed that there is the possibility of this fee, even though you don't currently have a stormwater, that there are still street improvements being made, street sweeping, curb and gutter, things like that that the mayor mentioned, and also the possibility of future improvements. I was wondering what your thoughts are now regarding this tax.
I guess I'll address what Heath mentioned before about improvements being made. Our development is maybe 5 years old and shouldn't, you know, I guess in my estimation, as the development was being done, the developer was let off the hook by not being made to put storm sewer in there as the development was being made. On the backside, 10th Avenue, and I'm not sure what the street is that runs way up to the east there, was completed the last year and a half. Storm sewer was put in there, but they were allowed to narrow 10th Avenue by, was it 3 feet, which seemed kind of odd, being as that's kind of a main thoroughfare in there. It would just seem to me that as some of the development is going on, the time to make sure these things are being done is up front, not on the end where you have to tax the people of Watertown in order to catch up and do something that wasn't done right in the first place. I understood that as I came here, my chances of me getting the tax set aside was slim and none, but I thought I'd come and just at least voice my opinion. First time I've ever done anything like this. But, and I appreciate you for appreciate that you've listened to me, but, you know, I understand that they're, you know, the street sweeper and so forth, though we don't see them very often during the year. And I don't know how often they do get around. It's one of those things. And yes, we have the curb and gutter, which is in there. It just that as the with the inordinate amount of rain that we had this year, and some pumps, you know, are generally discharged just curbside as the water runs down. The water runs not just from people in Oak, but from around the corner. Part of 12th runs down and it runs around. It just, again, because the road wasn't done right as far as the slope and so forth, there's water that sets as well. So I understand that it's probably one of those necessary things. I guess I did have a question as to what the lot size of a 0.38 acres is, you know, because I assume that's not going to cover every residential lot that's out there.
It's about a 15,000 square foot lot, so about 100 by 150, give or take. That's the size approximately.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
I don't know if anybody had any questions or that I might answer, why the concern or whatever, but again, it's just one of those things, a person keeps getting taxed, and obviously, you hope all taxes are fair, that's not always the case. And, some taxes are necessary for improvement and keep the city going forward. That's understandable, but, we need to look, I think the city needs to look at infrastructure a little, maybe more closely too, because up at that development, there's basically one way in, one way out. And as some of those developments are being made, it would seem to make a good sense to have, more roads coming in and out, because now everything gets dumped on 19th Street, and that puts a lot of pressure on that street, especially during the busy times. That's off the subject. Sorry.
That's right. Thank you. All right, we need to keep moving along. Does anybody else have any remarks they want to make before we move on? Seeing none, we will move to our next item. Thank you very much. Appreciate the presentation.
Thank you.
Item number 5 is continued presentation and discussion on the use of snow gates. So, have the street superintendent Rob Bainan here to talk about snow gates with Heath.
Thank you, Mayor. I have to raise this chair up. I'm too short. Let's see. Yeah, this is the one. All right, basically, when we last talked about this a couple weeks ago, I was asked to basically come back with some more information, some more facts, so we could discuss this a little bit further and decide, council can decide where we're going from here on our Snowgate program. Basically, let's see what we have here. Okay, so what we're looking for basically is options if we're going to expand our Snowgate program or if we're going to eliminate it, and maybe other options that are out there for a different level of service for the taxpayers of Watertown. I did some quick numbers on what we would need to expand our Snowgate teams, and right now we currently have 3 teams, 3 Snowgate units, and we run 4 machines in a team, which basically is the motor grader that plows the roadway, the driving lane, and then a motor grader with a Snowgate, and follow up with a loader and a sander truck. So basically I'd figured out that through talking to staff and through our experiences, determined that we could get by with 2 more Snowgate machines and effectively do the city. Obviously the more Snowgates, the faster you're going to do it, but we feel that we could still get the city cleared in a pretty sufficient time. Motor graders with Snowgate 6-wheel drive, they're $330,000 a piece right now. New ones are. So you'd have $660,000 worth of motor graders, 2 machines there. It'd take 2 4-wheel drive machines, which are the machines that would actually lead, and those are about $250,000, maybe a little bit more than that, but about $500,000 for 2 of them. You could hire contractors in place of those, as long as contractors are available for that season. Or current season, we do have a fair amount of contractors, and there's some years where we struggle to get contractors. But on an average snow event, we figured about $4,000 per motor grader rental of a contractor. So you'd have, if you have 2 motor graders from contractors running for a snow event, it'd be $8,000 per event. And we figure we average about 13 events every year, 13 snow events. Last year, I think we actually approached around 20 or 21. But in the past years, 13 is pretty close to the number. So we currently would, to expand to 2 more teams, snowgate teams, would need 1 extra front end wheel loader, which is $190,000. Could also hire a contractor to do that at $2,500 per machine per event. Sander trucks, we currently have enough sander trucks to take care of this if we expand the operation. Employees needed, now a minimum of employees depending on if we hire contractors to take up some of the work or if we have city staff take up the work. Basically, a minimum of 5 qualified operators is what we would have if we were to fill the voids with contractors in here with lead motor graders and with a wheel loader. And that yearly cost, now this is based on a grade 4 step 1 on the current system, it's just shy of $60,000 a year that the city puts into that employee. A yearly cost of just under $300,000. And then if we were to maximize the staff to take care of those 2 extra teams, 4-man teams, if city staff ran all the equipment, we purchased all the equipment, we'd be looking at 8 guys at just under $60,000 a piece, so you're looking at $465,000. So, you know, that's basically putting out there an option to expand our snowgate operation. They're definitely expensive machines, and as you guys know, in the 5.5 years that I've been over at the street department, we've purchased some extra snowgate machines and snowgates, and like today's plowing, they're great. I mean, early in the season, no snow on the boulevard, and the amount of snow is within a tolerable limit, and they work well. So,
Rob, if I may, just to clarify, Rob, could you verify for me and the council, these numbers are what it would take to do a full citywide snowgate snow removal?
right.
As opposed to the current partial use of the snow gates that we only use in a certain area of town right now.
That's correct. We currently, with our 3 teams, we do a good portion of Watertown, but of course, it'd take 2 more teams to complete all of Watertown, and to do it the way we do it with 4-man teams. There's times like right now we're short-staffed 1 person, and every time we're short-staffed a person, we have to hop and jump. Like today, we had 1 sander going for quite a bit of the day to keep up between all the teams, and then at the end of the day, we had 3 sanders going for the 3 teams that we're running. Plus, we're following up behind contractors and sanding the stuff that they're working on for us as well.
Rob?
Yep.
So currently, we have full neighborhoods that are, snow removal is done by contract.
Right.
And so we wouldn't do that anymore. We would have snow gates in every neighborhood, even the ones that currently have contractors, and the contractors would be put on different duties throughout town?
Yeah, if we expand and add more snow gates, contractors just aren't real willing to put the snow gates on. There is 1 contractor that's showing interest in putting a snow gate on. For the most part, though, we've struggled in 5.5 years to get anybody to show any interest in doing that. But we would take, like, currently we have contractors that are doing whole areas without snow gates. We would put them in the lead on some of our teams. Because you have to have basically a no snow gate machine can run a lead, and then you'd put the snow gate machine along the curb, which would be our guys. You know, I can't say I exactly like the idea of a contractor being the lead on our stuff. It's fine if we work as teams, but our guys, the more we work together, as our teams work together, the better they get, the more efficient they get. And there is some contractors that have been with us for a lot of years that they're very good. They know our city methods, you know, for plowing as good as any of our staff. So, but if you have from year to year, you do have contractors that might come and go, you know, and be here 1 year, and the next year they might be gone. So.
Yeah, we got do you have one, Glenn? Councilman Hoyer?
I was just going to ask Rob, why are contractors so hesitant to be willing to do a snowgate?
The snowgate machine, I think for a couple reasons. The cost isn't really that expensive to put them on. You can put a snow gate on them for under $10,000, a contractor can. I think it's more to do with the potential damage you can do to property. I had one of my staff members come in today that runs one of the snow gates, and he caught a mailbox today. It's the nature of the beast. I mean, there's 10,000 mailboxes out there. You're going to catch one once in a while.
Okay, who else had, Councilman Bueller?
I think, just so I understand correctly, you can't use a four-wheel drive with a snow gate, is that correct? Is that why you'd have them on the lead position as a
Right.
contractor?
A four-wheel
instead of-
drive on the lead. Yep, that's correct. They
That's
just
the
won't
main
pull it.
reason, you know, like the guys that are doing Derby Downs can't do it right now. They couldn't use a snow gate because they don't have a six-wheel drive machine.
Right, right. And the six-wheel drive machines, there's people that have tried them on four-wheel drive machines, and it even limits you more on the amount of snow you can pull with your blade. So with six-wheel drive machines, we're able to pull the maximum amount until either you spin out or it billows over the board. With four-wheel drive machines, you're really fighting yourself on that.
Councilman Vilhauer?
Rob, I'm not sure I understand the numbers, or I think I understand what you're telling us there, but do you have an estimate of what the incremental cost is of utilizing snow gates all over town? Let's say we bit the bullet, went all over town and used snow gates versus not using them any place in town. Do you have any idea what that incremental cost is on an annual basis?
I don't have that today. I could certainly figure that out. But based on my last presentation, some information that I had given about Sioux Falls, and I have it right here. I'll just, is that what it was? 33%? Sorry, this just take us. Okay, let's see. Yeah, annual plowing cost increased by 33% with snow gates. So good memory.
Not an insignificant differential.
It's a lot.
Councilman Y has a question.
Rob, you had mentioned that contractors are hesitant to put a snow gate on their equipment because of property damage. So how does that set right now if they are clearing our streets and they take out a mailbox? Are they responsible for it?
They are if we know they did it. Where we run into problems there is if our team members follow up with a wheel loader or a sander truck and they're plowing a corner or something and we catch something, sometimes we don't know who did it. Or like the lake, for example. We have a contractor that runs a lake for us, but we run the lake as well to just bust some of the drifting off maybe several hours after a contractor's went over it. So it could be anybody. We do have areas like yesterday I had a contractor run the north of 14th Avenue and east of 19th Street, and he called me and he let me know he caught somebody's landscaping. His blade jumped the curb and he caught landscaping. So those are things, of course, the contractor will pay for. But if it's something the contractor didn't even realize they hit, which a lot of times hard-packed snow, ice chunks, that type of thing will do mailbox damage, then we take care of it if we don't know who it is that caused the damage.
And one other question. Where can we not use these in Watertown?
You know, the one place that I've been struggling with that is the lake on the south side. I think we could quite often, but there's times that just anytime you have wind, it's going to be a problem on the south side of the lake. I did last year, I did have staff, we plow to the one side of the lake. In general, we plow to the outside where there's not as many houses. And on South Lake Drive, we have 14 houses that get all the snow. But I did have staff try to eliminate some of that snow as they were out there with wheel loader, just to take some of the burden off, because last winter it was just astronomical.
Councilman Roby?
Rob, I'd like your comment on the following. Anytime you have something that has such a large variable, in this case snowfall, then it starts to make sense to outsource some of that on an as-needed basis, which you obviously do with contractors. I think one of the biggest red flags up on your chart is, even though the variability is going to be there, one year could be a ton of snow, the next year could be very little. You now have other employees that we've hired, And we're not gonna be rotating employees off when you're on 1 year. Those employees, those are our sunk cost, if you will. And I think that we get, there's some disadvantages with that on this type of a variable situation. Your comment?
Yeah, that's another thing too. Actually, you'll see, maybe I'll just pull this other slide up, but you know, those extra people, if you're hiring 5 to 8 extra people, we always can use more staff, but how much staff is really makes sense for Watertown, our size. And you'll see, what is it, the 6th, yeah, needs additional equipment for new staff to use during the spring, summer, and fall street maintenance projects. You know, those extra staff, you're going to want to keep busy year-round. Of course, our productivity is going to increase. We're going to do better on pothole patching and type of the maintenance we do at the street department. But you know, there's extra costs that goes with that, with equipment, and of course, you're looking at $60,000 plus a year by the, you know, as we go for staff members. So it's not cheap to hire extra staff, and certainly not cheap to add equipment. You know, I like to see extra staff at the street department, but how much makes sense? Do we need 5 more people? Do we need 8? At the moment, I don't know the answer to that.
Councilman Albertson?
Rob, I have a question about the areas in town that don't get the gates. Is that because of scheduling, or why is it always the northeast area that gets plowed with the gates? Because I've honestly had a lot of people say they really liked it this time because of the, obviously, 3.5 inches of snow probably makes them work, but other people have said, we didn't see anybody at our place, you know, again, so.
Right, and last year, each season that we've gotten or expanded our snowgate operation, we of course grew the area that we were plowing. Last year we did some runs in River Ridge, North Ridge, Dakota Commons, Eastwoods, and we tried to include that, but what we found is we had contractors that were done working, and we just weren't as efficient because our 3 snowgate machines couldn't keep up. So our plowing time was taking a lot longer. Today, for example, my staff was done. We started at 3 o'clock this morning, and we were done with the downtown area and all the streets in the main core of Watertown that we normally do with our staff. And we were done by 3 o'clock, and the guys were like, boy, it'd be nice to be able to go into avenues right now. We could be done with the whole town. I firmly believe with the current contractors we have and current staff, if we weren't snowgating and I could bring contractors in to help us in the snowgate area, I think we could be done plowing in 20 hours, start to finish. And right now, the fastest we've done it in is 27 hours last winter, and we were really scooting and we had all the help we could get. But it does slow us down a lot. We brought the area back. I shrunk it back down a little bit so it's more manageable. So we're not doing River Ridge, North Ridge, Dakota Commons, and Eastwoods with the snow gates this year. As in the last presentation I showed that. I'm having a contractor do the outside areas there, and it went really well. The contractor, I had him start on Sunday, or last night he started 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Went till 1 in the morning, and then he picked up and finished. He started at 8 o'clock this morning and finished the last area, which was Eastwoods.
And I think one of the factors, Councilman Albertson, that come into play that Rob shared with me too, it comes down to the scheduling of the crews and the contractors and their particular routes that they cover, and then consistency from snow event to where not only our operators are familiar with, but also the contractors are familiar with. I think Rob runs into issues that he's expressed to me, or concerns, if we were to start shuffling those crews around, so to speak, from snow event to snow event. You lose a lot of efficiencies when we start doing that in these snow removal operations. I think that may speak to your question directly as to why they've focused these specifically in certain areas. That's one of the reasons I think that's come into play, is wanting to optimize the efficiencies of the snow removal, keeping crews in a consistent area from event to event.
Right, and actually to piggyback on what Heath was saying there, for an example, when you do move crews around, these guys know the bad manholes. If you ever listen to the city radio, you'll hear the guys, like today we're training one of our newer guys to run a motor grader with a snow gate. And the other operator that's with him is a lead team member was telling him, okay, watch out for this manhole coming up here, this water valve. And we know where the bad spots are, but when you move them into a different area of town that they don't plow, then all of a sudden you're wrecking a circle on a blade or you're tearing out a manhole. Now, the new contractor I hired to do the north and the east of 19th Street, he caught 3 manholes in a Kemp Place area that he wasn't aware of. He's figuring the area out. Now, I got to inspect it and find out if there's any damage that we have to repair. He didn't think there was up front, but it's still one of those deals that if you don't know your area, you can do a lot of damage.
Yep. Okay.
Okay, things to ponder regarding snow gating the entire city. Of course, the additional repair costs of snow gates. The rubber edges are $400 a piece for the rubber edge. The cylinders, I think, $800 a piece. Tires, you know, we run snow tires on our blades. They make a tremendous difference. I do recaps. It's about half the cost of new tread, so that saves us some money. Cost of fuel, insurance, cutting edges. You know, you're going to have that with any machines. You're going to have maintenance, but it's going to require more machines to grow this snowgate thing. Or do we go the other route where we don't do it? Or a third option, do we offer something else to the taxpayers? Let's see. Of course, completion of clearing roadways throughout the town. It's going to take longer. You know, in that study, we actually percentage. We're going to see if you remember the percentage. It's how much longer it takes. You did well. You had the 33%, right? I think it's 20-some% increase in time. Of course, I read about the additional staff and equipment to run them throughout the summer and the winter. Additional facility storage and difficult to find qualified operators. Now, we're finding that to be a little bit more of a problem. I think it's actually going to get better moving forward. The way it sounds, things might get better for getting new hires on board. Driveway, windrow cleaning with contracted skid steers. Now, this is an option we talked about, and I think I was asked to do a little research on that. In the past, the city of Watertown cleaned driveways with loaders. Now, I know there was a lot of problems back then, a lot of damage. With a big 30,000-pound loader, it's really hard to fill if you're wrecking something. With a smaller skid steer and a 2-speed where they go 14 miles an hour down the road, it might be a good idea. These are some of the facts. With the 2019-20 quotes, the average quote for a skid steer, a wheeled skid steer, is $80 an hour. That's with the operator. They pay for everything. We pay them $80 an hour. I did have a local contractor give me an estimate of what he figured it takes him to clear a driveway, to just do the windrow. Of course, we're talking about the windrows. We're not talking about the whole driveway here, just the windrows that we put. He figures he does 15 driveways an hour, which that comes out to every 4 minutes he's doing a driveway. That's with a 2-speed skid steer. Now, a single speed only goes about 6-7 miles an hour, so that really isn't efficient. Now, I did a lot of research. We did a lot of research to find out roughly how many driveways are in this town, residential driveways. Now, that was based on 3 different sources. First District with their address points, they came up with 90-some hundred points. They came up with 8,703 points. Then the utilities gave us residential billing of 9,600. And I talked with Mike Berger about the blue containers that they put out. And this year they have 9,928 put out. He did tell me that I thought the number was a lot lower on driveways that we have in this city, but it's averaged about 9,400 driveways that we potentially would have to deal with. Now, on average, we took last year's snow events and we averaged out 8 snow events, and the average was 5 inches at $31,000 cost to the city.
Rob,
Go
I'd
ahead.
hate to cut you off, but we're running out of time and we still have a zoo discussion
Okay.
coming up. And essentially, it would cost $600,000 to $1 million a year to remove the snow at taxpayer expense from all the driveways using your math.
Yeah.
So that, if that's what the council wants to do, we could probably create a new fee for that and collect, another $1 million a year to do snow removal in driveways if we wanted to. And that's kind of a hard pill to swallow. We were removing snow from some driveways, and it's important to point that out, that in the past, people think the snow was easily removed from every driveway in town at no cost to the taxpayers, but we weren't doing all the driveways. So that's not really fair to say we were doing it in the past and it was no problem. Would be a major expense for us.
Right.
So.
Either way, if you're looking at expanding with snow gates, the cost is quite high. If you look at different option with skid steers, it's going to be high as well. Average snow event, $31,000. If you add another $50,000 for contractors skid steers, you're looking at $81,000 for an average snow event.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. We got questions, Councilman Vilhauer?
I guess I want to make sure where we're leaving this conversation now. I mean, if we do nothing or give you no further guidance, it's continue as is for this upcoming winter.
Yeah, I plan on still running snow gates in the area that I presented at the last council meeting, which was basically the rectangle of Watertown, 21st Street to 19th Street, 14th Avenue to 212, that box right in there. That's where we will run them every time we can.
Councilman Hoyer?
Rob, real quick, PSA useful thing, because it happened to us today. So when we do a plowing event, like on a Monday, and say it's trash day on Monday, where would you guys like the trash cans? Up in the snowbank, or
Pretty much in your garage
In the
would be about the
driveway.
best place.
is that going to be an issue?
It's
snow knocking
difficult
them over and
plowing.
stuff?
It's one of the it's the nature of the beast where there's really not a good answer.
Okay.
I think we still have to help the landfill guys out when they're picking them up. We plow around them and we try our best not to knock them over because it's difficult for everybody when that happens. So
Okay, I just didn't know if there was a policy or something.
yeah,
We'll
not
dig
right
nooks
now.
for 'em, so.
Yeah, I do have a question at another time about mailboxes, and that would be my last slide about that. But anyway, I got to leave some time for TK here.
All right. Thank you, Rob. Appreciate the presentation.
Thanks, sorry it took so long. You bet.
Okay, the next item is AZA accreditation options report. So we've got the park director, Terry Kelly, here, along with Dan Miller, the zoo director, and I see numerous other zoo staff. So we really don't have a whole lot of time. Apologize for trying to squeeze so much into one meeting.
That might be a good thing, Mayor. I sat back there going, is this a good thing or a bad thing? So, we will shorten it up by, definitely.
We have a PowerPoint presentation. Let's give you the hoedown on this a little bit.
While she's loading up the PowerPoint, just to do a historical recap, with the AZA, before we get to the point, I just want to say, 3-4 months ago, this hit a traditional media landslide, then went to a social media landslide, and there was a lot of misnomers out there. The mayor, Kristen, myself, Attorney Roby, we dug into with AZA. We got them on the phone. We wanted to know what truly is it that we need to do. And I think we present to you today with those answers. So we've heard numbers from $1.5 million to $300,000 to engineering fees, but we're comfortable right now with what we have to present to you today to what we need to do to keep the accreditation. So Dan is obviously our zoo expert, and I will kind of turn it over to him, and I'll just simply pop in when I feel needed. So
One things I do want to bring up, it's not the physical stuff, It isn't just the quarantine building, the animal care building. It's not just staffing. It's other things that were deficient in. Animal records weren't kept update. enrichment policies weren't implemented properly. So there's a lot of policies and procedures that we also have to do besides the things that we're going to talk to you about as far as finance goes. As you know, we've been accredited for 25 years. We are one of the smallest communities in the United States that's AZA accredited. I think Wapaton might be a little bit smaller than us. We take pride in that. Only 10% of all zoos and aquariums in the United States are AZA accredited. You can also be USDA, which we also are. Just a brief on that. Go to the next one. Just a little bit of, I guess, economics, if you'd say it. We had 59,000 visitors, which is almost 3 times the population of Watertown. You can see the number of kids that participate and I guess all ages for education programs. You can see our special event numbers are very well attended. That brings out-of-town people. This is a random survey that we do, and you can kind of look at the numbers. 20% of the zoo visitors taking the survey, which is a sample size of I think like 2,000, stayed in a hotel in Watertown. That means a lot. 20% of zoo visitors taking the survey were having a vacation in Watertown. And 40% of zoo visitors came from outside the state of South Dakota. We usually got about surveys at the surveys, probably around between 34 and 40% of the people come from out of state. And that's so basically we're a great economic impact on the community of Watertown and one of the major attractions in Watertown. We can go to the left side. I'm trying to do the Reader's Digest version. Okay, you can see that everybody, I think, wants to be accredited. This was an older slide. One of the biggest things that we would lose would be our reciprocity list, which is membership driven. If you go to our zoo, you get to go to, say, 100 other accredited zoos throughout the United States.
Dan, we really only have about 5 minutes,
Okay.
so if you could cut
Okay.
to what
Okay, we
our
oughta-
options are for.
Okay, here's what we're looking at. We're looking at the top deficiencies from the AZA. Full-time animal staff, the Zoo Society and the city agreed to fund a position for 2020. I still do believe that we need another additional full-time position. Quarantine facility, we basically have a proposal that we would, if we did the plans and we did the design work and we had that all ready by June, ready to bid out in 2020, we would meet their needs. And the perimeter fence is in the works and should be done in a week or so. Questions?
So, yeah, I'll just jump in, Mayor, quick. We presented you options between the Park and Rec Board, the LAZS Board, and the Zoo Committee. Not to spend a lot of time as council, those are reasons those boards are in place. We had multiple discussions, Bruce, Glenn, Mayor, you've been part of those. To bring it down to a nutshell, when we came in, it was in 2014, we had our last inspection. That's where we placed in this animal care building. It went through the process of the 5-year waiting to get its turn. In 2018, during the budget cycle, we determined that fiscally we were going to move that back. We chose 2021 to move that $1.5 million building back. Unfortunately, in 2019, when we had our next AZA accreditation visit, they were concerned that we did move that back. So that's where we sit now. I presented the options to both the board, the LAZS, and the Zoo Society. What it turns out, the email that was sent out in front of you is from the Vice President of AZA Accreditation, who really laid it out for us. And if you read through that, basically what it says is have a plan. And what this plan comes with is a financial commitment for engineering services. The plan was $84,000, but understand that's through the completion cycle. That's on-site, construction management, that's, site visits. What we'd be looking at to get to the point of the documentation we need would be $63,000 in fiscal year 2020. That would provide us our bid documents, that would provide us everything that we need to let AZA know that we are on board. And then in 2021, we hope, nobody here can predict the future of that budget cycle, but hope to finish up that project with a shovel in the ground in the spring of 2021. So that's what we're before you. Of all the options we looked at, from let's move the main forward, the building forward now, wasn't financially doable. The second was a standalone quarantine building. We felt the costs of that were too high, and then to do a phase 2 later. Option 3 was to take an existing building we had and retrofit that to quarantine, while the current buildings we had wouldn't function properly to turn those into quarantine. So we feel as both the Park and Rec Board, the LAZS, and the Zoo Committee come with you to a recommendation for us to find the funds to secure our engineering services, which will meet the AZA accreditation on top of what Dan has to do internally. The staffing, the cities came forward, and we're already on the perimeter fence. I feel really good where we're at if we could secure some kind of funding to nail down these engineering. So I know we're in a time frame, so that's the quickest I could summarize.
Councilman Villar?
No, we do have, and Kristen is not here, so I'll ask whomever. We do have some funds designated for construction of the animal care building that could be used to satisfy the engineering and the design that you're referring to, TK?
Well, that would be the whole.
True.
Yes.
We have enough money set aside. We don't have enough to get it all built next year. We have enough money set aside to get it designed and bid and possibly start on construction. And Kristen was gonna have that exact number. She'll be here soon.
So that is a critical part that you're saying, and it sounds like we do have the funding for that part of it.
They want to know that the money is available to get it built as well. And so that's my concern with, pushing the council into a corner to force that money out, force their hand on how they spend their money is, that's what, I hate to do that to them.
Right.
And I want to know that I'd rather wait a couple years and do it exactly how we want it. And just, I know you say you can't retrofit any of the other buildings, but I don't know why the new maintenance shop couldn't be a temporary quarantine building until we get this all worked out. Then done, you've got it.
Right.
It's temperature controlled, it's got plumbing, it's got a floor drain. It meets all of the requirements I saw in the document that the AZA sent me for a quarantine building. And I know it's not what we want to do, but I just don't want to be pushed into doing something fast to get it done, and it's not what we want ultimately.
The biggest concern with the new maintenance shop that we did is it got in-floor heating. The question, those cages for tigers, bears have to be bolted into the ground. We have no idea where the water lines for the in-floor heat go. If we hit one, can we replace it? Absolutely. That was one of the options. The other option we did have, I think, was $280,000 to just do a quarantine, and we could phase 2 it out to the animal care building. What we sit here before you today saying, the minimum cost I looked at was that $63,000 for engineering services. The risk, as the mayor points out, maybe next year the funds are not there to move forward with 1.5. We could downsize that building then to just quarantine, but the longer we go on, we're about 3-4 months into this
Well, as my opinion, let me give you my opinion. I've been a zoo director for 30 years here, and I talked with the general curator. Putting quarantine cats in a park shop, we do not believe it would be safe for them. We just don't believe it would be safe for them. We have a safety issue. We have doubles and triple doors, our policies and procedures. I'm just telling you like I feel it is.
And I'm not saying that I disagree with that. I just have never seen any written anything. I've just heard, no, that's not going to work. But I don't know exactly why it wouldn't work. I mean, if you can spell out the reasons why that wouldn't work, we can maybe rule that option out. But I don't want to just dismiss an option which could be a viable consideration for us.
Well,
we have to come up with money for other things as well, and we're struggling there. So,
it gets my.
How long have we had these requirements from ASDA?
2014 was our first indication of quarantine space.
When did we build the barn?
It was taken out of the budget.
Yeah, I understand that. When
yes.
did we build the barn?
In 13 or 14.
Okay. And then we built the shop last year?
Yes.
How much did we spend on the shop?
It was about $242,000.
The Zoo Society paid $110,000 for the
And
shop.
in regards to the direction, it was the zoo building was part of the 5-year, the process we do. It ran its course. It went through the 5-year outlook, went to 4 years, 3 years, 2 years. It got to that year. Financially, the city, we just decided, let's push it back. We pushed it back to 2021. Unfortunately, we had a 2019 study that says, why do you push it out that far? You know, we could have put it in 2020, and, you know, I've had meetings with the mayor, and I understand exactly where the mayor's come from. You know, we've looked at those options, and we feel 63,000 right now to protect, you know, what was on the slides for the impact that the zoo has. Will, what I feel is a very strong, darn near close to 100% insurance that will remain AZA accredited.
What do we run profit and loss on those? I mean, have we talked about trying to fundraise to do that? I mean, I don't know what the zoo runs. Are they running?
Well, we
loss?
run a lot of different types of fundraisers. We get money from major foundations. Over the years, we've gotten almost $2 million from one foundation. So yes, we are fundraising. And we use a lot of those projects to fund a lot of the zoo projects. Like the barn, for instance, somebody put up $150,000 for the barn. The Watertown Community Foundation put $150,000 in the Watertown. So yes, we do use private funds for most of our projects, along with city funds, and we really like your support. We appreciate it.
And I guess, Adam, you know, to the point of short on time, maybe it needs to be rescheduled. I do have a lot more factual data to present, but unfortunately, time constraints, I try to do a very quick recap that probably would answer a lot of those questions.
Yeah, we're looking at $1.5 million facility is what they're throwing out there. And
well, and I do want to emphasize, though, that number has been in for now 7 years.
Right.
That's not, we just went, oh, you know what, if we're going to do it, let's make the Taj Mahal. That was a number we foreseen, not only that, it was staff space, kitchen space, vet space,
All of
quarantine
that
building.
space is really important, and I know we need it. We do need it. That's not the question.
Right, no, and I understand, Mayor, completely. We've been on the same page the whole time. That's the options. With an inspection in June, I'm simply looking at what can we, and I won't call it a Band-Aid, it is a long-term plan, but what can we do? Because if we get tabled again, we have to wait 5 years.
Well, we won't get
before we can
tabled,
reapply.
we'll lose
it.
We'll lose our accreditation if they come back and we haven't solved these issues.
Because this isn't budgeted, so.
Councilman Vilhauer?
So by September of 2020, we need to have a plan in place.
What that email outline is what we need.
So as to what that plan looks like, and we're not going to make that decision tonight, so we do have a little bit of time yet to work out what that plan or what that building, where that building or what it looks like may be.
Absolutely.
And from speaking firsthand, face-to-face with the accreditors, they want to see approved budget, not just long-term if we have money. Approved in our budget to build this facility. So that's what tells them that we're serious about it, if it's not built when they come back.
Okay. And I know we're moving into council agenda time. I appreciate the opportunity to finally tell you kind of where we're at and not hearsay. It's kind of the options we're looking at, and we'll keep moving forward, and I'll work with Chris and the mayor to come up with an actual council agenda item.
All right. Thank you, Terry. Yeah. We'll revisit this.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your support
You
and the
bet.
Zoo Society.
Thanks, Dan.
Appreciate it.
Okay, item number 7 is old business. Is there any old business? See none. Any new business? We will not be going into executive session tonight, so last item is adjournment. Have a motion by Lallam and a second by Y. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. We will take a 5-minute break, and we'll be back for the council meeting.
Yeah.